Chapter 324. As Fingzhou did not sleep at all last night, Grandfather Hua took his place in guarding the room this morning, while she went back to her room to catch up on sleep. As for the news that was spread, it was naturally spread after she, Grandfather Hua, and Guan Shilin discussed it. What would happen after the news was spread? They did not intend to bother with it at the moment. Therefore, after noon, the family clans sent people to deliver medicinal herbs to the door one after another. When they wanted to visit Feng Shao, they were all dealt with by the old man. Most of these people wanted to check on Feng Shao's condition, so Grandfather Hua naturally could not let them all see Feng Shao. However, he did let the housekeeper bring 1 or 2 people to visit the unconscious Feng Shao. Sigh. Old Master Feng, don't worry too much. As for General Feng's life, even if he is unconscious, there will be a chance for him to wake up. One of the family heads sighed softly and could only comfort him this way. Another family head nodded and said, "That's right. If our country of Glorious Sun does not have a skilled doctor, we can try to find one from other countries. Needless to say, if we can find the ghost doctor and get him to treat General Feng, there may be a chance for him to wake up. Right now, we can only spread the news and visit famous doctors. If we can find the whereabouts of the ghost doctor, then this old man can be relieved. However, my son's situation now, sigh." He sighed and shook his head, his face full of helplessness and sorrow. "Old master, the monarch is here." The housekeeper was waiting at the door and reported. Grandfather Hua went out to welcome him, leaving only Leng Hua at the bedside. The other 2 family heads looked at each other and went out to welcome him as well. Greetings to the monarch. Grandfather Hua cupped his hands and bowed, but before he could bow, Murong Bo helped him up. "Old master, you don't have to be so courteous. How is Feng Shao?" After helping Grandfather Hua up, he asked. His tone was concerned and his expression was worried, as if he was worried about his subordinate. Grandfather Hua shook his head with reddened eyes, his expression full of unconcealable sorrow. Fortunately, the steward of the black market sent over a life-saving medicine. Even so, he only managed to keep his life, but he has not been able to wake up. I'm afraid he will never wake up." Speaking of this, his voice choked and he raised his sleeve to wipe the tears from the corner of his eyes. "Old master, don't worry. I brought 2 doctors today and let them take a look at General Feng. Perhaps there will be a way." This old man thanks the monarch first. He cupped his hands and said. After the 2 patriarchs bowed, he invited them to enter together. Under the monarch's signal, the 2 doctors stepped forward again and carefully examined him. They were even more surprised. When they came yesterday, Feng Shao only had a sliver of life left, and he would not be able to last through the night. But today, although he looked the same as yesterday, his breathing was much stronger. It was obvious that he had managed to catch his breath and preserve his life. This made them feel even more curious about the medicine sent over by the black market. That medicine actually had the miraculous effect of bringing the dead back to life. Someone who was clearly about to die could still be brought back to life. The 2 retreated from the bedside and came before the monarch, respectfully reporting, "Monarch, although General Feng's life has been preserved, his internal injuries are too severe and the poison has not been cleared yet. As a result, he is unable to wake up. If we can find the ghost doctor, perhaps there will be a day when he will wake up." "Oh. It's like that." Chapter 325. Hearing this, the 2 masters in the room turned to look at the old man. They hadn't forgotten that the monarch had arranged a marriage for Feng Qingge. Although in the eyes of everyone, Feng Qingge marrying the crown prince of Qingting Kingdom as a concubine was marrying into a higher position, in the eyes of Feng Shao, being a concubine was an insult to his precious daughter. That day, Feng Shao flew into a rage over this matter and even grabbed the prime minister's collar and threw him out. It was obvious that he didn't agree to this marriage. But now, Feng Xiao had fallen and Feng Qingge had yet to return home. Who knew how this marriage would turn out? Thinking of this, the two masters quietly looked at the monarch and the old man. The old man's expression was still mournful as he said, "Only send a letter to tell her to come back quickly. I didn't tell her that something happened to her father. If she knew, who knows how worried she would be." Hearing this, Murongbo didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he said, "Old man, don't worry too much. It's not easy for Feng Xiao to be alive. This monarch believes that if we can find a good doctor, he will definitely be cured. I accept the monarch's auspicious words." The old man lowered his head slightly and cupped his hands. There was no sorrow in his eyes, only sorrow and anger. However, that sorrow and anger had disappeared without a trace when he raised his head. It was as if it had never appeared, making it impossible for anyone to notice. The few of them chatted for a while. After Murongbo left, the two masters also took their leave. After sending everyone away, the old master returned to Feng Xiao's courtyard with a sullen face and sat down without saying a word. The several Phoenix Guard captains who were guarding in the shadows looked at each other strangely. "Say, since eldest miss has returned, why did she say that she hasn't returned yet?" The old man must have his reasons for saying this. "Why do I feel that it was eldest miss' idea? Speaking of master, I didn't expect that her face would recover this time. There isn't a single blemish on her face." Hearing him call him master, the others looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. "It seems that young Mrs. Beating has really subdued you." The blue-robed man glanced at them and said with a smile, "Hey, don't blame me for not reminding you. You should know that if you don't listen to the advice of your elders, you will suffer a loss." As he said this, he saw Fingzhou, who was dressed in plain white, walk over. "Look, it's master." The blue-robed man revealed a smile. Without saying anything, he stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Luo Yu greets master." Fengzhou's footsteps paused slightly. He glanced at him and revealed a faint smile. "It's you." He grinned. Hee, master still remembers this subordinate. "Didn't I beat you up last time?" She raised her eyebrows and glanced at him. Her gaze swept over the people who were walking over. She didn't say anything else and walked into the courtyard. "Grandfather!" She called out, and the old man sitting in the courtyard looked up. "Little Feng girl is here. The king and the others just left." The old man stood up and asked, "Do you want to see your father?" "Come, grandfather will accompany you in." "All right." She replied and left Leng Shuang outside to guard while she followed the old man into the room. Once the door was closed, no one knew what she was doing inside. The people who were stopped by Leng Shuang could only guard outside the courtyard. Only Luo Yu shamelessly asked Leng Shuang all sorts of questions. Chapter 326. Stand guard outside the courtyard. Ling Shuang frowned as he watched the blue-robed man walk in. Hearing this, Luo Yu's eyes flickered as he said, "Master didn't tell me to stand guard outside the courtyard." He glanced at the closed door and grinned, "Don't worry, we're all on the same side." Ling Shuang frowned as he saw Luo Yu swagger to the table in the courtyard and sit down. Luo Yu began to drink tea and eat the pastries on the table. Thinking of his master's previous words, he didn't ask Luo Yu to leave. Instead, he stood guard in the courtyard and didn't allow them to take half a step closer to the room. When the others saw this, they were slightly surprised. After looking at Ling Shuang for a moment, they also looked at the tightly shut door and fell into deep thought. In the room, the old man accompanied Fingzhou to the inner room. Ling Hua stood guard by the bed while Feng Xiao lay unconscious on the bed. "Master." When Ling Hua saw her, he respectfully bowed and retreated to the side. Fingzhou sat down by the bed and checked her father's pulse. Then, she took out silver needles from her space and unsealed the acupuncture points that she had sealed. After about half an incense stick's worth of time, the unconscious Feng Xiao slowly opened his eyes. When the old man saw this, he couldn't hide his joy. He looked at Fingzhou with reddened eyes and finally put down the stone that had been hanging in his heart. This morning, little Feng told him that her father had woken up. When he came to see him, he found that he had fallen asleep again. Later on, he saw little Feng use a few silver needles to prick his body a few times. He saw that he was unconscious until everyone came to visit him. Although he didn't see him wake up, he believed Feng Er's words and did as she said. Now that he saw the unconscious Feng Xiao wake up, one could imagine the excitement in his heart. Feng Xiao, you scared us to death. The old man choked with sobs and sighed in relief. Feng Xiao opened his mouth and wanted to speak, but his breathing was still weak. He only moved his lips, but no sound came out. Father, don't worry. His body will recover slowly. Fengzhou said softly, although his injuries are serious, everything will be fine once he wakes up. As long as he recuperates, he should be able to get out of bed and walk around in a month. His injuries were serious. His chest had been shattered and all his internal organs were damaged. If she wasn't skilled in medicine and had studied medicine and medicinal pills, such injuries would be incurable. However, with her medical skills and medicinal pills and medicines, she could recover about 50 to 60% of his body in a month's time. Of a month, there. Okay. I'll listen to you. The old man nodded repeatedly. He turned around and instructed his subordinates to block anyone who came to visit. At this time, the door was knocked twice and a figure walked in. Xiao Zhou, I brought the porridge. Guan Shilin came in with a small bowl. Seeing that the old man was also there, he called him grandfather. When the old man heard that he was bringing food for Feng Xiao, he couldn't help but ask, Xiao Zhou, can your father eat porridge now? His chest injury is so serious, I'm afraid. Chapter 327. As she poured the congee, Guan Shilin carefully helped Feng Xiao up from the bed. This allowed Fingzhou to feed him the congee. She brought the congee to the bedside and blew on it to cool it down before feeding it to him. While feeding it, she said, Father, there's some spiritual liquid inside. Aside from healing your organs, it can also restore your strength and stabilize your body's breathing. Be careful, it's hot. The old man watched from the side as Fingzhou carefully took care of him. He could not help but smile and nod to himself. Who said that only men were good? Who said that only men could carry the family's glory? The things that men could do, women could do as well. In fact, they could do it even better. Even if his Feng Manor's main branch only had a single child, Feng girl, he did not need to worry about her from a young age. Being filial to her elders was not a problem. Now that something like this had happened in the Feng Manor, if it was a man, he feared that he would not be able to handle the pressure and would panic. As for her, a 16-year-old girl, she had shouldered it all. She had used her delicate shoulders to support the entire Feng Manor, holding up the sky for them. Thinking to this point, his heart was filled with emotion. He felt both proud and distressed. Father, you should sleep a little longer. Fengzhou quietly said. After feeding him a bowl of congee, he had Guan Shilin lay him down to rest. Only Leng Hua remained to watch over him, and the three of them left the room. Grandfather, brother, let's talk in my courtyard. She looked at the two of them and said. Okay. The two of them replied and nodded. Fengzhou looked at Luo Yu and the others in the courtyard and said, You guys stand guard in the courtyard. Without my permission, no one else is allowed to take half a step into the room. They looked at each other and replied in deep voices, yes. After telling the Feng guards to stand guard in the courtyard, they all went to her courtyard. On the other side, in the imperial palace, Murongbo, who had returned to the palace, looked at the two elders standing in the middle of the hall. Slightly hesitant, he asked, "What do you think? Is that Feng Shao really unconscious and has become a living dead?" It was not that he was suspicious, but that this matter was somewhat inconceivable to him. They thought that Feng Shao was dead for sure, but who knew that the black market would send him a life-saving medicine that saved his life? Another thing was that they thought he would wake up after saving his life, but they didn't expect him to fall into a coma and become a living dead. Although this was a good thing for them, for some reason, there was still a trace of indescribable irritation and uneasiness in their hearts. The two elders in the palace looked at each other and pondered for a moment before saying, "Monarch, Feng Shao was hit by each of our palms. At that time, we used almost 70% of our strength. If it was an ordinary person, they would have died long ago. Only this Feng Shao could hold on until now. However, we believe that even if he didn't die, he is not far from death. After all, his internal organs must have been damaged after receiving 2 palms. Even the gods can't save him." Perhaps Murongbo wanted to seek affirmation from them so that he could be reassured. At this time, when he heard the two of them say this, his hanging heart finally relaxed. "Yes, I also think so." He nodded and smiled. "These 2 days have been hard on the two of you. It is our fortune to be able to share the monarch's burden," but the two of them paused slightly and hesitated. They looked like they had something to say but didn't know whether they should say it or not. Seeing this, Murongbo's expression slightly changed and he smiled. "If the two of you have something to say, please say it." Chapter 328. That strange-looking horse was definitely a spiritual beast. However, they were unable to determine its rank and breed. However, for it to not fear their martial ancestor pressure and killing intent, they believed that its rank was definitely not low. If they could obtain it, they would definitely tame it and make it their spiritual beast mount. After all, they had never encountered a spiritual beast with such intelligence and battle capabilities. Ever since that battle, they had always wanted to obtain it. Hearing the two's words, Murongbo was slightly startled. "You want that horse?" Based on what this lord knows, that horse called Old White was brought back by Feng Qinga when she went out to train. If you want her to give it away, I'm afraid that it's not very likely. From that battle, he knew that the horse was not normal. After all, 2 peak martial ancestor experts had been sent flying by its 2 hooves. Would a normal horse have the ability to do that? However, he was a dignified monarch. Wanting to steal her mount was something that he could not say. With Feng Shao gone, only Old Master Feng and Feng Qinga remain in the Feng Manor. Of the two, one is old and the other is young. The old one has a bit of amnesia and the young one does not have much strength. After a few days, they might not even be able to protect the Feng Manor. How could they protect a horse? If it's not easy for Lord to speak now, it would be better to wait a little longer. This old man feels that if Lord speaks, Feng Qinga will not dare to disobey. After all, with Feng Shao gone, things are different now. Hearing this, Murongbo's heart was slightly moved. He smiled and said, "That's fine. Then we'll wait a little longer. When the time is right, this lord will definitely give that horse to you too. If that's the case, then we'll thank Lord first." The two cupped their hands and bowed. Smiles appeared on their faces. From their point of view, this matter was not too difficult. With Feng Shao gone, would the Feng Manor not become a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered? It was only a horse. When the time came, even if she wanted to protect it, she would not be able to. At the same time, the 8 Feng guards guarding Feng Zhao's courtyard were seated together. However, their thoughts were focused on the tightly shut door. "Do you think the patriarch is really unconscious?" one of them asked curiously. "That should be the case. Didn't the monarch bring a doctor to check on him? What's more, I heard that patriarch was severely injured at that time. It's already not bad that he's still alive. But why do I feel like something isn't quite right? Why don't we go in and take a look?" someone suggested with a hint of eagerness in his voice. "I advise you not to have such thoughts. Master has just instructed that no one is allowed to enter without his permission." Luo Yu, who was dressed in blue, was leaning against a tree in the courtyard with his arms around his waist as he stared at them. His voice was indifferent, and there was no trace of his usual joking expression on his face. "But, we don't know about the family head situation, so we can't be at ease. What's more, Fan Lin's medical skills are pretty good. Wouldn't we be able to find out about Patriarch's condition if we let him take a look?" Fan Lin, who was dressed in white, thought for a while and said, "It's not good to go in without the permission of the First Miss and the Old Master. I think we should forget about it. We will know what we need to know. If they don't want us to know, it's best that we don't ask." Chapter 329. As soon as he said that, he really did walk towards the tightly shut door. "Chi Kong." The others all called out to stop him. The Phoenix Guard who had walked forward stopped and turned around to look at them. With a mischievous smile, he said, "You're all too nervous. I won't do anything to the family head. I'm just curious and want to take a look. It's fine." As soon as he said that, he reached out to push open the door. At the same time, his outstretched hand was grabbed by someone. Turning his head slightly, he saw that it was Luo Yu who was holding his hand. "Luo Yu, what are you doing?" Luo Yu looked at him with a solemn expression. His eyes were clearly filled with displeasure. "Chi Kong, when Master left, he ordered us to guard this place. Without permission, no one is allowed to enter. You agreed at the time, so don't make things difficult for us." Seeing the seriousness in his eyes, Chi Kong was slightly startled. He was stunned for a moment before he withdrew his hand and stepped back. He turned around to look at the people behind him. Seeing their serious expressions, he smiled apologetically at them. "Sorry, I was just a bit curious. Then I won't go in." Originally, he didn't think much of this matter, but now that he saw them all like this, he felt embarrassed. He really didn't have any other thoughts. He just wanted to know the family head's current condition. He didn't think that in a moment of impulse, he would almost make things difficult for his brothers. Chi Kong was the youngest among the 8, but he wasn't an unreasonable person. After realizing his mistake, he immediately apologized and corrected it. Seeing this, they all let out a sigh of relief. Only then did they relax. In reality, they didn't know that not only did Fengzhou order them to guard this place and not let anyone enter, he also ordered the hidden guards to carry out the order. If anyone entered without her permission, they were to be killed without exception. As for the movements in the courtyard, the hidden guards would naturally report it to her. Even if she wasn't there, she would clearly know what was happening. 2 days later, she specially rushed back from outside. This time, she let everyone in the city see her figure and let everyone know that she had returned. Once news of her return spread through the city, Murong Yixian headed towards the Feng Manor. However, he never thought that when he arrived at the Feng Manor's gates, there were already over 10 people waiting outside. He quietly ordered his attendants to inquire about them. Only then did he find out that they were from the Feng Manor's side branches. Seeing this, he did not go to the Feng Manor. Instead, he found a tea house not far from the Feng Manor and sat down on the second floor to drink tea. At the same time, he paid attention to the Feng Manor's main gate. "Master, eldest young miss, a member of our Feng Manor's branch family has come." He says he wants to see the family head. The housekeeper reported the situation outside and waited for the two's orders. Collateral branches. Which branch? The old master frowned as he asked. It's the second old master's branch. Even the second old master is here. Hearing this, the old man fell into deep thought. He glanced at Fingzhou, who remained silent, and said to the butler, "Bring them to the hall. I'll go take a look." "Yes," the butler replied before turning around to leave. "Little Feng, what do you think?" the old man asked. "It should be that they heard that father fell and have set their sights on us." She smiled without thinking much of it. Today's matter was just the beginning. There would only be more and more wolves eyeing the Feng manor. That's right. These people are all ingrates. I'll go get rid of them. As the old man spoke, he walked out. Chapter 330. The old man stopped and turned around to look at her. Fengzhou stood up and walked towards him. She softly said, "Just let me go. Grandfather should stay here with father." "You're going?" The old man was slightly surprised. He was worried that she wouldn't be able to handle it. "It's only a few side branches. Is grandfather worried that I can't handle them?" She slyly smiled. She flicked her sleeves and walked towards the hall. At this time, the people waiting in the hall were already impatient. "Why hasn't she come yet? Isn't she looking down on us too much?" "That's right. Once Feng Xiao fell, she doesn't even know how to treat guests." Hearing the people in the hall complaining, the old man sitting with his eyes closed with a cane opened his eyes and shouted, "Shut up." With this shout, everyone in the hall quieted down. No one made a sound until the housekeeper's voice came from outside. "Eldest young miss has arrived." Hearing this, everyone in the hall looked at the figure that was walking in from outside. They saw a person wearing a white dress. Her figure was slender and delicate. Her steps were light and elegant as she slowly walked in. With every step she took, her white dress bloomed like waves. It was very beautiful. Looking up, her face was elegant and otherworldly. Her snow-white skin accentuated her beauty vividly, making it impossible for anyone to forget her with just one glance. Thinking about it, to be able to be called the #1 beauty, her face couldn't be compared to ordinary beauties. It was just that rumors were one thing, but seeing her in person was another matter altogether. They felt that there was a kind of aura on her body that made people unable to shift their eyes away, and that aura was not the slightest bit inferior to her peerless appearance. Looking at her, everyone's thoughts turned. Think about it, how could such a slender and delicate girl have the ability to support the entire Feng family? Thinking of this, they felt that coming here today was the right choice. Qing Gu greets second granduncle and several uncles. She bowed to the old man and several middle-aged men in the hall before walking to the main seat and sitting down. "Why are you here? Where's your grandfather?" the old man asked in a low voice, with a hint of displeasure at being treated lightly. "There have been a lot of things going on in the manor these few days. Grandfather's body can't take it anymore, so he's resting now." Her voice was soft and her tone was slow, just like a rich young lady who was raised in a boudoir and didn't understand the world. At this moment, she gave off the feeling of being docile and harmless. After hearing her words, the old man glanced at her and said in a heavy tone, "We have already heard about your father's matter. It's because we heard about it that we specially rushed over. It must be known that we are relatives with the same blood flowing through our veins. Now that something has happened to the Feng manor, we cannot just stand by and watch." Hearing these words, Fengzhou picked up the tea that the servant brought and took a sip, hiding the mocking smile on her lips. She narrowed her eyes and drank the tea unhurriedly. Chapter 331. Fengjiu put down the teacup and a faint smile appeared on her beautiful face. The young men standing behind their fathers could not take their eyes off her. She raised her eyes and looked at the middle-aged men sitting in the hall. Finally, she looked at the old man and said with a smile, "Second uncle is considerate. Everything in our manor is fine now. We don't need uncle to take charge of our Feng family." Her voice slightly paused and carried a bit of indifference. "Moreover, although you are part of the Feng family, the Feng manor has already been separated since grandfather's generation. Each of you is in charge of your own affairs, so it would be best if second uncle does not interfere with our Feng manor's matters." "What are you saying? Is there anyone who speaks to their elders like this?" The old man's tone was displeased and his wrinkled face sank. He clearly did not think that a junior like her would dare to use this sort of evidence to speak to them. "That's right. Once Feng Shao fell, you see, even this is out of order. Sure enough, we can't not have a single person in charge." The middle-aged men sitting on the two sides also spoke with heavy voices and looked at Fengjiu with reproachful gazes. As for the young men standing there, they were thinking that if they could enter the Feng manor, then in the future, they would be able to get closer to their little cousin sister. Also, if the Feng Guard's power was truly taken over by their second branch, then their second branch would truly be able to overturn the heavens. Hearing their reproach, Fengjiu gently laughed. She leaned back in her chair and played with a strand of hair that had fallen to the side. Her expression carried a bit of indifference and a lazy aura emanated from her body. Almost as soon as she laughed, her entire aura changed. If she was as docile as a kitten before, making people think she was weak and easy to bully, then at this moment, she was as lazy as a sleeping lion. She stretched her body and emitted a dangerous aura. It made people unable to help but feel a chill run down their backs. A chill that reached their feet made them feel a bit uneasy. "What are you laughing at?" Because her laughter made them a bit scared, a middle-aged man could not help but ask with a heavy voice. Fengjiu raised her cold eyes and glanced at them. The corners of her lips slightly curled. "Naturally, I'm laughing at you for overestimating yourselves." Once these words were said, everyone could not help but feel ashamed. The old man's cane heavily slammed against the ground and he sternly shouted, "You dare to be so rude to your elders? How impudent! Go and call your grandfather out. I'd like to ask him how he teaches his juniors to actually make them disrespect their elders like this." Fengjiu looked at their greedy faces, yet they all put on righteous faces. She felt that they were very annoying. Her slender, white fingers gently tapped on the table. Seeing that each and every one of their faces were filled with indignation, yet they wanted to take over the Feng manor, thinking of this, the corners of her lips curled into a smile. A strange light flashed through her eyes, as her lazy voice came out. "Since you said that you want to help us take over the Feng manor, then you must have some strength. Otherwise, not to mention my grandfather not being willing to hand over the Feng manor's power, even I would not agree, much less our Feng manor's Feng guards." However, her voice paused and she looked at them with a smile that was not a smile. Chapter 332. Seeing their anxious expressions, Fengjiu curled her lips into a smile. "However, if you can beat me, I will definitely hand over the Feng manor's authority." Hearing this, everyone froze for a moment. They could not help but begin to laugh. One of the middle-aged men laughed loudly and said with disdain, "You don't joke around. Not to mention me, even those of the same generation as you are stronger than you. Is that so?" She gently smiled and her eyes curved like a harmless little white rabbit. "There is a martial arts field in the manor. How about we go there?" Once her suggestion was made, everyone in the hall raised their hands and feet in agreement. Thus, under her lead, everyone arrived at a martial arts field near the back of the mountain. Along the way, only the old man slightly furrowed his brow. He looked at Fingzhou with an inquisitive gaze, as if he wanted to see through her depth. Unfortunately, the girl in front of him had a harmless appearance, making it impossible for him to see through her. After everyone in the manor heard this, they began to quietly discuss it. However, as people of the Feng manor, their lips were tightly sealed. Even if they discussed it in the manor, they would not spread the news. However, because they knew about this matter, some of them took the time to follow and watch. After the 8 leaders of the Feng guards heard this, they were a bit shocked. It can't be. The eldest young miss. She wants to compete with them. Based on what I know, the second branch does indeed have a few talents. One of them just became a martial great master last month. If the eldest young miss fights with him, wouldn't she be delivering herself to their doorstep for nothing? The eldest young miss shouldn't be that kind of person. Since she is doing this, she must have the confidence to beat them. Ha! How is that possible? Just her strength. Don't joke around. One person waved his hand, his face full of disbelief. Only Luo Yu's eyes lit up after hearing this news. He put his hand on Fan Lin's shoulder and said, let's go, let's go. We'll go watch Master take care of people. I'll tell you, you haven't fought with her before. If you run into her, you will only be unlucky. It's not that you don't believe in her skills, alright? It's rare to have a chance to watch. Don't miss it. After saying this, he half pushed and half pulled Fan Lin towards the martial arts field in the back of the mountain. When the others saw this, they paused for a moment before following him to the training field. The secret guards who were hiding in the shadows around the courtyard sighed inwardly. They also wanted to go and take a look, but unfortunately, they had to guard this courtyard and could not leave. The old man, who was talking to Feng Xiao in his room, didn't say much after hearing the news. He knew the Feng girl very well. If she wasn't confident, she wouldn't do this. He guessed that she wanted to make an example out of him. The people from the second branch were really too much. They just had to come at this time. It was really disappointing. Originally, he wanted to ask Leng Hua to go over and tell her to be merciful, but after thinking about it, he gave up. If it weren't for the lesson of blood, these people wouldn't give up, and they wouldn't be afraid. Just let her be. At the martial arts field, there were originally many guards in the residence who were watching. However, before they could see the fight, they were dispersed by the steward and returned to their positions. Therefore, in the end, only the dozen people from the second branch, as well as a few captains of the Phoenix Guards, Leng Hua, and the steward were left watching from the side. Cousin, my father said that in order to prevent others from saying that he is bullying the young, he let me fight you. The young man walked out, his face full of arrogance. Chapter 333. Hearing this, the young man's face darkened. He couldn't do it. Why couldn't he do it? Cousin, you sure talk big. I haven't even tried yet. How do you know that I can't do it? He spoke in a strange tone, his gaze sweeping across her body provocatively. It was obvious that he was hinting at something. As soon as he said that, before Feng Nine could say anything, the faces of Luo Yu and the others, who were not far away, darkened. They stared coldly at the man, especially Luo Yu. He cracked his knuckles and cracked his knuckles, taking advantage of his master's words. Humph. I'll remember this brat. Feng Jiu saw that he was looking at her wantonly, and he seemed to think that she didn't understand what he was saying. Seeing this, she only raised her eyebrows slightly and glanced at him. The corners of her lips curled up slightly, and there was a dangerous smile. Since you want to try, then go ahead. I only hope that you won't regret it. The old man and a few middle-aged men heard this and felt a little puzzled. She clearly didn't have any strength, so why was she so confident? One of the middle-aged men saw this and was about to ask his son to step back, but his son had already stepped forward. "Come on. I'll let you have a taste of my strength." He had a malicious smile on his face and was already in a fighting stance. Fengzhou saw this and moved to the weapons placed at the side of the training field. Her fingers paused as she ran across the swords and sabers. No one knew what she thought, but she shook her head and smiled. Finally, she picked a round wooden stick that was about 1.2 meters long. "Don't you need to pick a weapon?" She raised her eyebrows and looked at the young man opposite her. It was said that this belonged to her cousin. However, he was a cousin of a generation and they weren't close. Against you, my bare hands are enough." He laughed loudly. In the next moment, a malicious look appeared on his face. He said, "Cousin, you have to be careful." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly stepped forward. His hand formed a claw and grabbed at Fengzhou's chest. The faces of the 8 Phoenix guards nearby turned ashen. "This pervert!" Luo Yu cursed under his breath. As a man, he really wanted to step forward and give this man a kick when he saw such a vulgar action. What a disgrace to men. The youngest of the 8, Qi Kong, also had an extremely ugly expression as he stared at the young man. What kind of relative was he? He might as well not acknowledge such a relative. The others did not speak and only frowned as they watched the scene. Fan Lin noticed that Ling Shuang, who was standing not far away from them, had a cold and calm expression on her face. He could not help but be slightly surprised, as if he had thought of something. His gaze once again turned towards the training grounds, and with this look, the frown on his face relaxed. The woman in white had an indifferent expression on her face. She stood there without moving, and the round wooden stick in her hand seemed to be held casually. There was no posture to speak of. When she saw that the young man's first move was to attack her chest, she just raised her eyebrows and sneered. Just as the young man's hand was about to reach her chest, he saw her step sideways. At the same time, the round wooden stick in her hand instantly hit the outstretched hand. When the round wooden stick hit, they could even hear the sound of a wind blade. Chapter 334. Hiss. Ah! That shrill scream masked the sound of the bones in his hand shattering. That strike had shattered all the bones in his hand. His hand was instantly swollen like a pig's trotter. His other hand was tightly gripping his hand, twitching in pain. His entire body was jumping on the spot, trying to alleviate the pain in his spine. "Oh! My hand! Hiss! It hurts!" Seeing this scene, the expressions on the 8 Fengzhou's faces relaxed, revealing expressions of schadenfreude. "Serves him right. That's how you should hit him," Luo Yu and Qi Kong said at the same time. As soon as they finished speaking, the two of them looked at each other and laughed. Their eyes were bright as they looked at the white figure in the arena. They felt that her strike had vented their anger. When the people from the second branch saw this scene, their expressions turned ugly. When they saw him attack her chest, they felt that they had lost all face. Now, they had just made a move and he had already hit them with the stick. Because their line of sight was blocked by the man when the stick landed, from their point of view, the stick should not have been very heavy. Therefore, when they saw him scream like that, they felt that he was a good-for-nothing and had embarrassed them in front of the Phoenix Guards and Fengqinga. However, at this moment, the round wooden stick in Fengzhou's hand swept out again, landing on the man's calf. He screamed in pain and his entire body staggered to the side. As his body was suspended in the air, everyone saw a strong gust of wind from the stick sweep past. With a whoosh, it swept across the training field and landed between the young man's legs with a bang. Ah! Wah! Hiss! Almost at the same time, different voices came from different mouths. The surrounding men who saw this scene could not help but clamp their legs together. Their eyes widened in shock and their hearts suddenly trembled. Hiss! This move is too ruthless. Even my balls hurt when I saw it. Luo Yu clenched his legs and said. He only felt that the last time the master beat him, he was really lenient. At least, at that time, he only beat his handsome face, not his little brother. Chi Kong swallowed his saliva, his face full of lingering fear. This eldest miss is ruthless. Too ruthless. At this moment, he couldn't help but think that if he had really entered the patriarch's room that day, would the eldest young miss have also given him such a blow? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but shudder. Sure enough, women were either not ruthless, or when they were ruthless, they were simply inhuman. Fan Lin looked at the young man who had been sent flying by a single strike, falling in front of the people of the second branch. He did not even have the chance to scream before he fainted from the pain. Fan Lin stroked his chin and said, with this strike, there is an 80 to 90% chance that his manhood is crippled. The others looked at the young miss, who had put away the round wooden stick behind her back, and couldn't help but say, I really couldn't tell. Young miss, this, a gentle and harmless girl, can actually wield such a lethal strike. You really can't judge a book by its cover. The middle-aged man cried out in alarm. After he helped the unconscious man up, he found that the man's hand was like a piece of broken bone, hanging limply by his side. His entire palm was filled with blood, and on his legs, the man's weakest part, there were also drops of blood faintly seeping out, staining his trousers red. Seeing this, his heart clenched. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Fingzhou, who was not far away, angrily and fiercely shouted. Chapter 335. Fingzhou raised an eyebrow and sneered, blood relatives. You dare to talk to me about blood relatives? Do you really think that my Feng manor is easy to bully just because my father has fallen? Take control of my Feng family. You think you're worthy? Hearing this, the expressions of the people from the second branch changed again. Seeing this woman who no longer hid her thoughts and spoke sharply with a cold expression, they realized that she had been playing with them from the beginning. She never wanted them to enter the Feng family. She never wanted them to take control of the Feng manor. She deliberately wanted to humiliate them and embarrass them. Good, Feng Qinggu. Good. Very good. The middle-aged man gritted his teeth in anger. He handed his injured and unconscious son to the people behind him to take care of. He strode towards her and angrily said, Today, I will properly discipline you in place of Feng Shao. Seeing the middle-aged man walk towards her, the 8 Phoenix Guards' expressions changed and said, He is the one from the second branch who just became a martial ancestor last month. No matter how good the eldest young miss is, she is only good at agility. I'm afraid that she will be at a disadvantage against him. We'll go and help. You dare to humiliate the eldest young miss in the Feng Manor's territory. You're simply looking for death. That's right. Do you really think we're decorations? Let's go. They shouted and walked forward. At this time, they saw the Leng Shuang walk over and block their path. Don't go and cause trouble for Master. Her cold voice coupled with her expressionless face made her look like an ice beauty. Her tight black clothes added a touch of coldness to her. She lacked the gentleness of a woman, and only had coldness. He is a martial ancestor. Can Master deal with him? Luo Yu was slightly startled. When he asked this, he felt that it was inconceivable. The Ling Shuang had been by Master's side for a long time. If Master could not deal with him, she would be the first to rush forward. But now, she had come to stop them. It could only be said, Master's strength was enough to deal with a martial ancestor-level middle-aged man. Hiss. Was this possible? Thinking of this, he sucked in a breath of cold air and stared in shock at the white figure. When the others heard this, they also looked at the white figure in disbelief. They had seen how enchanting and dazzling she was when she wore red. That was a kind of wanton insolence, and her whole body exuded a confident and noble light. Now, she was wearing white in the matinee. At first glance, she gave people a gentle and harmless feeling, like a docile sheep, without the slightest bit of aggression. However, this was only an illusion at first sight. Otherwise, that young man wouldn't have screamed so miserably. Thinking of the stick she had swung down, the few of them trembled, swallowed their saliva, and unconsciously clamped their legs together. Worried about her? Perhaps they were worried for nothing. In the training field, Fengzhou, who was holding a round wooden stick, saw the middle-aged man angrily striding towards her. He raised his hand and slapped her face with a hidden force. She raised her eyebrows and threw the round wooden stick in her hand behind her back. She directly attacked with her bare hands, and with a strange speed, she caught the wrist that was swinging towards her. Her feet moved to the side, and in the instant that she dodged, she twisted the wrist that was being held down. With a crack, she broke it. At the same time, she placed her other hand on his shoulder and pulled his entire arm off. Hiss! Chapter 336. Amidst his blood-curdling screams, the crowd gasped in disbelief. The onlookers widened their eyes in disbelief at this scene. If it had not happened right in front of their eyes, they would never have believed that a dignified martial great master would actually be subdued in one move. Ah! The middle-aged man's knee was kicked, causing him to kneel down. His body was pushed forward, and the arm that had been held down was twisted and pressed against his back. The pain caused him to break out in a cold sweat. He wanted to stand up, but he found that he could not do it. The people from the second branch were all dumbfounded. The 8 Phoenix guards were also dumbfounded. This was simply perverted. With this kind of skill and this kind of strength, who would dare say that she could not support the entire Feng Manor? Who would dare say that they wanted to help her control the Feng Manor? Everyone's hearts began to tremble. The people from the second branch were all frightened. They never thought that Feng Qingge would have such a strange skill. She was actually able to subdue a martial great master in one move. With this kind of strength, if they were to say what they had said earlier, they would have been overestimating themselves. As for the Phoenix guards, their hearts trembled because of excitement. They were excited that her skill and strength were outstanding. In their eyes, only such an outstanding person was worthy of being their master. Among the crowd, the old man from the second branch's turbid eyes were filled with shock and horror. Perhaps others could not see it, but he clearly saw it. She clearly could have taken his life in that instant, but she did not. She only broke his hand and his arm. To them, she was already being merciful. He thought that if it were not for the fact that they were all surnamed Feng, perhaps just the fact that they wanted to enter the Feng Manor today would have been enough to have them all die here. Thinking of this, he felt a wave of fear. His heart trembled with fear, and cold sweat began to seep out. He quickly used the cane in his hand to support himself, preventing his body from swaying and falling to the ground. But even so, he still grabbed the arm of a similarly shocked middle-aged man and said in a trembling voice, "Quickly, quickly bring him back. Let's go." However, at this time, no one dared to go forward. They all stood there in shock as they looked at the beautiful woman with a cold expression. "Let me go. Let me go." The middle-aged man who was being held down struggled and angrily shouted. But in the next moment, a hand blade landed on the back of his neck. With a grunt, he fell to the ground and fainted. Feng Zhou's expression was indifferent and cold as she looked at the people of the second branch. Her cold voice carried a warning as she said, this is the first and last time. As disciples of the Feng family's branch family, you should act like a branch family. If something like this happens again, then I don't mind making your second branch disappear from the Feng family's branch family. Hearing the sharp and cold warning, the people of the second branch felt their hearts skip a beat, and their hearts sank. No one doubted the truth of her words, because from the way she acted, it was clear that she was not a person who cared about blood ties or kinship. If there really was a next time, they believed that she would do as she said today and make their second branch's name disappear from the Feng family's branch. The old man took a deep breath and suppressed the fear in his heart. He looked deeply at Fengzhou. I understand. I will take care of the people from the second branch. Something like today will not happen again. Chapter 337. Yes. The steward calmed himself down and respectfully responded. Only then did he come to the second branch and lead them out. Seeing them leave with their tails between their legs, not even daring to cause trouble, Luo Yu couldn't help but laugh heartily. He strode towards Fengzhou with a fawning expression. Master, only now do I know how good you are to me. Fengzhou lightly raised her eyebrows and glanced at him with a faint smile. Her gaze swept past the few people and she walked out of the martial arts field. Seeing that she wasn't talking to him, Luo Yu thickened his skin and followed. The martial arts field quieted down after they left, leaving only the 7 Phoenix Guards standing there. What do you think? With eldest Miss skills and strength, she's qualified to be our master, right? Fan Lin smiled and looked at the few people beside him. The few of them pondered, and one of them said, Eldest Miss has indeed exceeded our expectations. If she's like this, it won't be a problem for her to take charge of the Phoenix Guards. That's right. Her style of handling matters is very swift and decisive. When it's necessary to be ruthless, she's ruthless. Normal people can't compare to this kind of courage. I think so too. Last time, I didn't have a chance to meet her, but this time, I saw many things. I think she's like a sleeping tiger. She doesn't make a move, but when she does, it's absolutely shocking. However, we've been back for so long, but she hasn't given us any orders. It's like she's treating us like invisible people. Could it be that she's dissatisfied with us? Qi Kong asked with some worry. At this moment, he was wondering if she had found out about what had happened that day. There's no point in thinking too much. Let's go. The few of them looked at each other and walked back. They all knew in their hearts that perhaps it wasn't them testing whether she was qualified to be their master, but rather, she was the one testing whether they were qualified to be her subordinates. In a faraway country, a man dressed in black came to Hui Lang's room. He handed over a piece of information and quietly left. Ying Yi, who was sitting at the table drinking tea, glanced at him and asked curiously, "Is this the information that Master wanted to investigate?" And, that day when the ghost doctor left, wasn't Master held back by some matters and unable to look for him? After he came back, he asked me to investigate his whereabouts. I only got the news recently. Hui Lang answered as he opened the file to take a look. We couldn't find him in the Green Ting Kingdom. Master then reminded me to send someone to the Blazing Sun Kingdom to investigate secretly. See, we only receive news from there now. A 9th-class small country. Why would the ghost doctor go there? Ying Yi frowned. In his opinion, the ghost doctor couldn't be someone from a small 9th-ranked country. After all, a small 9th-ranked country couldn't produce a pharmacist like him. How would I know? Master didn't say anything. He only told me to send someone to the Glorious Sun Kingdom to investigate. Speaking of this, he took out the information in the bag. At the very top was a portrait. The person in the portrait was dressed in flamboyant red robes. Her appearance was absolutely beautiful, and that pair of eyes that contained craftiness and wisdom seemed to be staring at them through the paper, as if she was scheming something. The slightly curled corners of her lips carried a hint of wickedness. She was a living embodiment of the ghost doctor's wickedness and evilness. Chapter 338. Enid glanced at him and said, "You're wrong. Lovesickness is a matter between two people. As for Master, anyone with a discerning eye can see that it's unrequited love. If the ghost doctor had Master in her heart, she wouldn't run away every time. AI. You can't blame the ghost doctor for this. You say, she's just a 15 or 16-year-old youth. She's just like a sapling. Although she's a bit more abnormal than the average person, she can't deny the fact that she's only 15 or 16 years old. Moreover, Master is gay. That ghost doctor looks quite normal. It's one thing for Master to like him, but it's another for him not to like Master. You said that Master likes him, but you can't force him to be gay, right?" Hearing this, Ingi looked at him strangely. "You mean, the ghost doctor looks normal, but Master isn't normal?" Hui Lang sat up straight and suddenly turned around to look at the surroundings. Then he grinned and said, "Master isn't normal to begin with. You say, would a normal man give up a big chest, a big waist, fine skin and beautiful face to like another man? But..." He adjusted his expression and glanced at Yi. Giving a light cough, he said with a serious face, "Master is Master. Whether Master likes a man or a woman, it's not something us subordinates can stop. So seeing that Master likes the ghost doctor, I'm also doing my best to help Master. I also hope that Master can turn the ghost doctor gay, so that the two lovers can finally be together." "Ah, you're worried that I'll tell on you to Master?" Yi took a sip of tea and asked, "Do I look like someone who would tell on you?" Hui Lang glanced at him and said in a bad mood, "You won't tell on me. You only run to Master when you're drunk and say everything." Cool. Yi coughed uncomfortably and said, "I was drunk that time." "Didn't Master not take it seriously at the time?" "Yes, he didn't take it seriously. Master only said that next time he'll find some stronger wine for you to try." Speaking of this, he sighed, "If it wasn't for the fact that I don't have anyone to chat with, I wouldn't have been tricked by you so many times." "Gee. How is this a casual chat? You're obviously gossiping about Master behind his back. Other than me, who else would dare to listen?" Only the two of them, who had always been by their Master's side, dared to whisper about this. If it were anyone else, who would have the guts to do so? As Yi spoke, he saw that he was still holding on to the ghost doctor's portrait for a long time without putting it down, so he said, "Be careful with that painting, don't damage it. Master told us to hand this painting over to him." You don't know, when Master finished the painting, he was standing by the window with the portrait in his hand, cursing the ghost doctor for having no conscience. When I saw that, I felt that Master was possessed. If it weren't for the matter here, Master would have already gone to find the ghost doctor. I know. If it wasn't to make it easier for the subordinates to find the ghost doctor's whereabouts, Master wouldn't have let this painting fall into the hands of the subordinates." Hui Lang said as he put the portrait in his hand on the table. Then, he took out the information he had collected from the investigation. After a while, he widened his eyes in astonishment and stood up in disbelief. What? The ghost doctor is a woman. Puff. Cough cough. Chapter 339. He looked up at him in astonishment. What did you say?" Hui Lang excitedly held the information in his hand and laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha. "That's great. So the ghost doctor is a woman. This way, Master will be normal. This way, we can have a little Master in the future. Ha 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 ha." Ah. His laughter stopped and he stared at Yi with wide eyes. "You're in trouble, you actually drenched the ghost doctor's portrait." Yi was stunned for a moment. Looking at the portrait that was drenched by the tea he spat out, he thought of how Master had repeatedly told him to return the portrait, and his scalp couldn't help but feel numb. "Let me look at the information." He snatched the information in his hand and looked at it. The more he looked, the more surprised he was. Not only is the ghost doctor a woman, but she's also someone from a small 9th-ranked country. I really didn't think that a place like that would produce someone like her. Who cares what country it is? Anyway, in this way, when Master brings the ghost doctor in front of everyone in the future, no one will say that she's a homosexual. That's right, you said that the ghost doctor is a woman. Did Master already know about it? He suddenly remembered that perhaps Master already knew about this. It's possible. Yi nodded. Thinking of how Master didn't hide his love for the ghost doctor, he must have already known that she was a woman. Otherwise, even if Master didn't fear other people's gazes, he wouldn't allow others to say that he was gay, right? Thinking of this, he rubbed his chin. It seemed that only he and Hui Lang had said that Master was gay. Just as he was thinking about it, he saw Grey Wolf take away the documents and the portrait that had been splashed with tea and quickly walked out. "I'm going to report to Master about the ghost doctor's whereabouts." Hui Lang grinned and waved the portrait in his hand, smiling maliciously. "While I'm at it, I'll also tell Master about this portrait." As soon as his voice fell, he instantly rushed out of the room. This ungrateful wolf. Yi angrily cursed in a low voice and quickly chased after him. In the room, Yama Lord was sitting in front of a desk dealing with affairs. He was wearing a black robe with a dark dragon pattern on it. After busying himself for a while, he put down the pen in his hand and took a sip of tea. "Master! Come in." When Hui Lang, who was outside the room, heard the sounds coming from inside, he pushed open the door and walked in. Grinning, he quickly walked to the desk and excitedly said, "Master, there's news about the ghost doctor." As he spoke, he handed over the information, as well as the portrait that had been soaked by the tea. When he saw his master frowning and staring at the portrait, he said unethically, Yi was too careless when drinking tea. He spat out a mouthful of tea directly on the portrait. Yi, who had hurried in, happened to hear this. He glared at Hui Lang and knelt down on one knee to beg for forgiveness. "It's all this subordinate's fault. Please punish me, Master." Yama Lord glanced at the two of them and flipped through the information in his hand without saying a word. The more he read, the tighter his frown became, especially when he saw that she was engaged to a man named Murong Yixien. His face darkened. It wasn't until he reached the last page that he saw the latest news that their engagement had been annulled that his furrowed brows relaxed. His handsome and resolute face revealed a faint smile that was hard to detect. Obviously, he was very satisfied with this news. Chapter 340. Hearing this, the Yama Lord raised his eyes and glanced at him. His handsome and resolute face didn't need anything else, but it was enough to make people feel that he was incomparably majestic. Hui Lang smiled embarrassedly and said that this subordinate saw the information earlier and knew that the ghost doctor was originally a woman, so this subordinate thought that for such an outstanding woman like the ghost doctor, if Master isn't by her side, I'm afraid that she will be snatched away by other men. The Yama Lord leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms as he looked at him. His sexy thin lips slightly curved into a smile that wasn't a smile, and a low and magnetic voice came out of his mouth. "Do you think this lord will lose to other men? Or is it that she will be easily seduced by others?" Seduced. Hearing this, the kneeling Yi's face trembled and he hurriedly lowered his head. Did Master think that those who got close to the ghost doctor were all men who seduced her? However, it seemed that the only one who had been seducing the ghost doctor was Master himself. Although this was the case, he didn't dare to say it out loud. Hui Lang heard his question and the corner of his mouth twitched. He smiled embarrassedly and said, This subordinate didn't mean that. It's just that, as the saying goes, good women are afraid of pestering men. No matter how good a woman is, no matter how cold a woman is, she is still afraid of men pestering her. With this kind of pestering, it's hard to say when a man will unknowingly pester her. Hearing this, the Yalmo Lord's eyes moved slightly and a light flashed in his deep black eyes. He looked at Hui Lang and said, You mean, as long as this lord learns the word pester, I won't be afraid that I won't be able to seduce her. Seduce. Ying Yi really didn't have the courage or the face to look up. He only wanted to say that Master was too deeply affected by the ghost doctor's love poison. Even words like seduce and seduce could come out of his noble and domineering master's mouth. Moreover, from his tone, it seemed that he was going to carry it out. At this moment, he couldn't help but raise his head and glare at Hui Lang. He only felt that he was making random moves and coming up with all sorts of messy ideas. Because, he really couldn't imagine how their noble, domineering, and somewhat aloof master would entangle a woman and try to abduct her away. In contrast to Ying Yi's reaction, Hui Lang was very excited. After hearing his master's words, his eyes lit up. Master, that's right, women have to be pestered, but they can't be pestered. You have to have a way to do it. Some women are reserved and refuse to nod easily, and some are to test how important they are to men. Master, with Master's condition, Master's pester her. If it's any other woman, why would Master pester her? Just a look, just a word, and a bunch of women will throw themselves at you. Yanzhu glanced at him and thought to himself, even Grey Wolf can tell that I'm not attracted to that woman. After thinking for a moment, he waved his hand and said, You may leave. Hui Lang, who was talking enthusiastically, was stunned for a moment. Just as he was about to open his mouth and ask, When are they going to find the ghost doctor? Ying Yi stood up from the ground and dragged him out. This subordinate will take his leave. Ying Yi said and directly dragged Hui Lang out. Glancing at the two people who left, the monarch's eyes flashed slightly. He looked at the portrait in his hand. The person in the portrait had a pair of intelligent eyes and a cunning light. The corner of her mouth had a devilish smile that made people love and hate her. It made him feel as if there was a feather stirring in his heart, stirring up a pool of spring water. Chapter 341. Achoo! Fengjiu sneezed just as she was putting the researched powder into a bottle. She rubbed her nose and whispered, Could it be that someone is thinking of me? She shook her head with a smile when she heard this. She couldn't believe her sudden thought. After all, the people who would miss her were all by her side. Xiao Zhou. Guan Shilin, dressed in black, strode in with a joyful expression on his face. My mansion has been renovated. I've had people demolish and rebuild many of the things inside. I've also chosen a date to move into the mansion. It'll be in 3 days. Fengjiu smiled when she heard this. Really? That's great. I haven't had time to take a look since I came back. Come, accompany me to see how you've renovated the mansion. She handed the bottle in her hand to Ling Shuang, who was behind her. This is medicine for my father. Take it and have Leng Hua change his dressing. Then tell grandfather that I'm going to take a look at my brother's house. Because it had been several days, her father's body had recovered well and he was in good spirits, so Leng Hua was in charge of changing his dressing. Yes, Ling Shuang replied. He took the bottle of medicine and headed to Feng Zhao's courtyard. Let's go, Guan Shilin said excitedly and led her to the Guan family that he had built single-handedly. The two families lived next to each other. After walking out of the gate for a while, they saw the big house. When they came to the gate of the big house, Feng Nine stopped and looked up. Guan Shilin saw her gaze fall on the plaque covered with a red cloth. He smiled and said, I asked grandfather to inscribe the words on it. We'll open it when we enter the mansion. Come, let's go inside and take a look. And she smiled and walked into the mansion with him. Master, eldest Mississippi, there were only a few cleaning servants and a housekeeper in the mansion. When they saw the two of them enter, they hurriedly put down their work and came over to greet them. Go about your business. Guan Shilin waved his hand and led Fingzhou inside, introducing her to the layout of the manor and the source of the idea for the construction. Look, this is the east main courtyard, where I'll be staying from now on. This courtyard is the biggest. You can practice martial arts here when you wake up in the morning. I even asked someone to install a wooden stake for practicing martial arts here. Oh right, I'll show you your courtyard. Why did you leave a courtyard for me? She stared blankly at him. Of course, you're my little sister, how can I not leave a courtyard for you? You must know that the Feng Manor is your home, and this place is also your home. In this home, you will always have a place. He smiled and said, I know that you like peace and quiet, so I left the south courtyard for you. Hearing his words, Fingzhou's heart warmed, and his eyes curved into a happy smile. Thank you, brother. You don't have to thank me. We're family. He laughed and brought her to the south courtyard. It's this big. Seeing that he had left the entire south courtyard for her, she could not help but be surprised. Normally speaking, aside from the main courtyard, the other 3 courtyards could each have 2 or 3 small courtyards. However, he had turned the entire south courtyard into a large courtyard. The space it occupied was only a bit smaller than the one she had in the Feng Manor. Chapter 342. The courtyard is very big and beautiful. It's just that, brother, you've left such a big place. If I don't come back in the future, it'll be a waste. The Feng Manor and the Guan Manor were neighbors. Living here was the same as living there. If she didn't come to live in such a large residence, it would be a waste. It's fine. Either way, I'm just one person. It's fine if it's here. He waved his hand and did not mind. Hearing this, Fingzhou gently smiled. In the future, when you meet someone you like and have a few children, you won't be living here alone. Ha ha ha, that's still far away. Also, I don't have the mood for that right now. He laughed loudly and put his hands on his hips. Looking at the large residence, he said, I want to personally establish a Guan family that belongs to me. That way, I'll have my own home in Yaori. In the future, when I go to other places, if I can find my parents, I can bring them home. Fengzhou looked at his face full of expectation and could not help but say, brother will definitely be able to find them. That was his wish, and it was something he had always wanted to do. She believed that as long as he had the conviction, there was nothing he could not do. Just like how he had personally established the Guan family, he had no one to help him. He had relied on himself, and he had relied on his conviction. With his hands on his hips, Guan Shilin had a smile on his face. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, he quickly said to Fingzhou, that's right, Xiaozhou, I still need to go find grandfather to discuss the matter of entering the residence in 3 days because there are still many things I don't understand. I still need to discuss with him about who to invite into the residence. Then let's go. Grandfather should be in father's courtyard right now. She smiled and walked with him to the Feng Manor. With the old man's help, he helped Guan Shilin list the people he wanted to invite into the residence. They were none other than some of the clans and powers in the city. He wanted to use this joyous occasion to let them know that he, Guan Shilin, had established a clan that belonged to him. From today onwards, he would reside in Yunhua City and become one of them. Even if this clan was only a small clan now, with his own strength, there would come a day when no one would dare to look down on him. On this day, Guan Shilin ordered people to send the written invitations to all the families and forces in the city, inviting them to come to the Guan mansion 3 days later to celebrate the completion of his new house and have a cup of wine with him. It could be said that after receiving the invitation from Guan Shilin, the people of each family had different expressions on their faces. Each of them was thinking, now that Guan Shilin has sent the invitation, what should we do? Or not? This Guan Shilin was quite a character. Chapter 343. And it seemed that there were not just 1 or 2 families that were hesitant about this issue. In Yunyu City, the head of a mid-tier family was in the middle of a meeting with a few elders. After hearing the invitation, he also furrowed his brow. Holding the invitation card, he looked at the old man on the bottom left and asked, First Elder, what do you think about this invitation card from Guan Shilin? Should we go to the banquet? Or should we not go? The elder stroked his beard and looked at the red invitation, saying, although Guan Shilin established the Guan family by himself, it is only a small family. Its power cannot compare to the powerful families in Yunyu City. Thus, even if we don't go, there is no problem, but he paused then continued, this Guan Shilin is indeed a young man with ability and courage. Up close, he does not stand out, but in the long run, he is different. Not to mention his own strength, just his relationship with the Feng Manor will allow his small Guan family to gain a foothold in the city. That's why the head of the family might as well send someone to inquire about the plans of the other families. It will not be too late to make a decision after that. Head elder's words are reasonable. The head of the family nodded in agreement. He waved his hand and ordered someone to inquire about the news. On the other side, after hearing that Guan Shilin's new residence would be completed in 3 days, the faces of the Guan family members were not too good. At this time, the atmosphere in the Guan family's residence had become extremely heavy and oppressive, making it difficult for people to breathe. I never thought that idiot would grow up so quickly. How long has it been? He actually has the ability to establish a residence. A middle-aged man spoke slowly and strangely. It was clear that he was very jealous of Guan Shilin's achievements in such a short amount of time. At the same time, there was a trace of envy in the depths of his heart. It must be the Feng Manor that helped him. Otherwise, how could he have done it alone in such a short amount of time? Another person said with a frown. His face was also very ugly. TCH. He has already left our Guan family and accepted Feng Xiao as his foster father. How could the Feng Manor not help him? The family head had a gloomy expression as he listened to their words. After a while, he said in a gloomy voice, whether or not the Feng Manor helped him, we do not know. However, he does indeed have some ability. Otherwise, he would not have taken first place in the black market's Wang rankings. The Guan family had so many scandals because of him, but this person had already left the Guan family. When they thought that he would be like a stray dog without a home, he took Feng Xiao as his foster father. Now, he even established a small Guan family by himself. Regardless of the size of his family, it was already not easy for him to achieve this at his age. The old master is here. Outside, the housekeeper raised his voice and shouted. Everyone in the hall was stunned and quickly stood up to greet him. Old Master Guan walked in with a crutch in his hand. His sharp eyes glanced at everyone in the hall and then fell on the head of the family who came to greet him. The head of the Guan family helped him to the main seat and asked, Father, why are you here? Let me ask you, did Shilin send an invitation? Hearing the old man's words, everyone in the hall looked at each other and lowered their heads. He did not. The head of the Guan family's voice also became stiff. It seemed that he did not think that his father would care about this issue. Chapter 344. Father, he didn't even send us an invitation. Naturally, he treats us as strangers. Why should we go up to him? The Guan family head looked unhappy. Obviously, he didn't want to do as he said. Master Guan glared at him and said, "If I say send it, then send it. If you don't send it, then I will personally arrange for someone to send it." He finished speaking with a dark face, turned and walked out. He had always regretted Guan Shilin. If he had not been so biased, the Guan family would not have lost such a good seedling. Now, even if he wanted to make up for it, it was too late. This was the only thing he could do. Seeing that Master Guan and Master Guan were not happy, everyone in the hall looked at each other and did not say anything. 3 days passed quickly. A burst of firecrackers broke the silence of the morning, ushering in joy and a new day. For Guan Shilin, this day was undoubtedly exciting and unforgettable. He had to get up before dawn to arrange things. He was busy outside and did not have many people in his residence. Therefore, fortunately, Fengzhou sent people over to help. As for the food and other things, they were directly ordered from the big restaurants in the city and sent over. This way, it saved him a lot of trouble. "Brother, don't be so busy. I've already arranged everything. Now we just have to wait outside the residence to welcome the guests." Fengzhou smiled and came to his side. Today, she was dressed in a white dress as usual. Her black hair was lightly tied up, leaving only 2 strands hanging in front of her chest. It added a bit of charm to her beautiful face. "It's almost time. Xiao Zhou, help me entertain the guests in the residence. I'll go to the entrance to welcome the guests," Guan Shilin said with a smile. After giving his instructions, he strode to the entrance. The first to come to the Guan residence was Steward Yen of the Black Market. He was followed by 2 people who came with generous gifts. Before they even got close, they cupped their hands and congratulated him. "Ha ha ha, Shilin, congratulations. Many thanks, Steward Yen, for taking the time to come here despite your busy schedule. Please come in." He also cupped his hands and invited him in with a smile. "Congratulations to young Master Guan for moving into your new home." A family head came with 2 family juniors, who had also prepared generous gifts, and stepped forward to congratulate him. "Thank you very much, Master Li, this way please." Guan Shilin cupped his hands in return and led them through the gate. The butler then led them to the Fengzhou inside. As time passed, more and more people arrived. The entire Guan mansion became lively because of the arrival of the guests. The voices of the guests were accompanied by laughter, causing the entire Guan mansion to be filled with a lively and festive atmosphere. "Brother, is everyone here?" Fengzhou came to her side and asked. Guan Shilin turned his head slightly to look at her and said with a smile, "Yes, everyone is here. Let's go. Let's go in." "All right." She smiled. Just as she was about to turn around, she heard a voice. "Young Master Guan, congratulations on moving into your new home. I came uninvited to ask for a cup of wine." Murong Yixian, who was dressed in a white robe, walked over slowly with an air of elegance and nobility. Behind him was a servant holding a gift. Although he was talking to Guan Shilin, his gaze fell on Fengzhou. When he saw her, his eyes moved slightly. Chapter 345. Please. Fengzhou turned around, glanced at Murong Yixian and made a gesture of invitation. Murong Yixian smiled faintly before he walked in. When Guan Shilin followed Murong Yishuan, he saw a carriage stop in front of the gate. When the curtain was lifted and a man walked out, the smile on his face disappeared. It was Master Guan, his grandfather, who was helped out of the carriage. However, since he stepped out of the Guan clan, he had nothing to do with Guan Shilin anymore. This time, he didn't send them an invitation. In his opinion, they were ruthless to him, so he didn't need to be loyal to them. Shilin, I am here to give you a gift. Congratulations on your new house. Master Guan walked over with his walking stick. An old man behind him gave the gift to Master Guan. No need. His voice was cold and hard. He looked at Master Guan expressionlessly and said, My Guan clan is just a small house. I don't dare to accept your gift. He made a fist and palm salute. Then he turned around and walked inside. Master Guan made a heavy sigh and said, It is my fault. It is all my fault. The old man who was holding the gift said, Master, let's go back. He knew it was going to happen, but he had to prove it himself. Maybe Master Guan didn't want to believe that Guan Shilin had nothing to do with the Guan clan anymore. Let's go. Master Guan sighed. He looked at the two gates of the Guan clan and sighed. In the end, he got on the carriage and left. Nobody noticed that at the corner of the street, a woman was staring at the carriage in a daze. She was none other than Kushinya, the woman who broke off the engagement with Guan Shilin. The man who she didn't think highly of in the past had built a clan and became the head of the clan. Even though it was a small clan, it was already amazing for a young man to grow up so fast. She felt bitter in her heart. If she knew this would happen, she wouldn't have done it. If she hadn't broken off the engagement back then, the man who had become more outstanding and mature would have been her man, and half of the Guan family would have belonged to her. But now, the more she thought about it, the more upset she felt. However, there was nothing she could do. She could only turn around and leave. The atmosphere in the Guan mansion was lively and cheerful, because Guan Shilin was toasting each table with wine glasses, and the sound of people talking and laughing could be heard. At this moment, the steward rushed in, and his face was full of surprise and excitement. Master, the ghost doctor sent someone to deliver a gift. Almost as soon as these words were spoken, the entire banquet fell silent. Everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. After being stunned for a moment, they all looked at Guan Shilin, who was holding a wine glass. At this moment, countless thoughts flashed through everyone's minds. Was Guan Shilin friends with the ghost doctor? The ghost doctor actually sent someone to congratulate him. Guan Shilin was startled for a moment before he put down his wine glass and looked at the two old men who walked in from outside. They were men from the black market. He recognized them. Why are you here? Steward Yen of the black market stood up in surprise. The two old men nodded to Steward Yen and then saluted to Guan Shilin. They said, Master Guan, we are here to deliver a gift for the ghost doctor. After that, two exquisite rectangular boxes were handed over to the two old men. For a moment, people started to guess. Chapter 346. For a moment, everyone's curious gazes fell on Guan Shilin, guessing that since the ghost doctor was a pharmacist, would the congratulatory gift he sent be medicine as well? However, Guan Shilin obviously didn't want everyone to know. He only ordered people to receive the gifts, then invited the two elders to take a seat and personally poured wine for them. After all, these two were people who didn't often appear in the black market. If it wasn't for his relationship with the ghost doctor, he wouldn't have been able to see these two people, let alone have them personally come here. Following his greetings, everyone laughed and drank again. However, after this incident, everyone had a different view of this newly emerged Guan family and felt that they had made the right decision in coming here today. If they could make friends with someone who had a relationship with the ghost doctor, it wouldn't be bad at all. During the banquet, everyone was thinking of ways to make friends with Guan Shilin. There were also some who tried to indirectly ask Fengzhou about Feng Zhao's situation. Muro Ni Xian, who was sitting at the same table as Fengzhou, looked at her from time to time, trying to find an opportunity to chat with her. Until, during the banquet, Fengjiu got up to relieve himself. Murong Yixian also got up and followed him. When Fengjiu walked back to the front, she saw Murong Yixian sitting in the pavilion by the rockery. Seeing this, she only glanced at him, then directly walked forward. However, after taking a few steps, she was blocked by him. Is something the matter? She frowned slightly, looking at him blocking her way as she asked. Qinggu, the marriage that my royal father arranged for you, you know about it, right? Murong Yixian's gaze fell on her beautiful face. It was the same face, but it had a different expression. However, it couldn't be denied that it still attracted his gaze. Marriage? She raised her eyebrows and smiled. Did I agree? Hearing this, he relaxed and said, I will try my best to persuade my father to withdraw his order. You don't have to worry too much. In his opinion, even if she did not agree to it, if his father did not withdraw the decree, she would not be able to get married. After all, the Enchanting kingdom was a sixth-grade kingdom, which was incomparable to the glorious Sun kingdom. Sometimes, there were many things that they did not have the right to speak on. This was also the difference in strength. In this world, no matter where one was, only strength was everything. For a girl as beautiful as her, if it were not for the Feng manor protecting her, she would not be able to live so freely. Fengjiu smiled and said nonchalantly, It's better if you don't meddle in my business. She moved forward, but when she passed by him, she paused and said, As for my marriage, other than myself, no one can decide for me. Murong Yixian was slightly startled. He tilted his head slightly and saw that the white figure had already moved forward. Her steps were so calm, so elegant, so calm. It was as if she did not put that matter in her eyes. Looking at her who was full of confidence and calmness, he suddenly felt a little lonely and a little startled. He did not know when, but the gentle person in his memory was no longer there. The person in front of him was familiar, but there was a strangeness that could not be ignored. It was as if the two of them could never return to the past and could never be together again. On the contrary, the distance between the two of them was getting further and further. Qinggu, what should I do with you? Chapter 347. After a busy day, after sending off the guests, the servants began to tidy up. Guan Shilin sent Fengjiu back to the Feng manor. They all sat together and talked about the day's events. Not bad, the fact that they all came means that they value you. Even if your family is small, to be able to invite the family heads of all the families in the city is already quite a bit of face. Old Master Feng stroked his beard and smiled as he looked at Guan Shilin with a face full of praise. If it weren't for grandfather's help, I would have been a mess today. He smiled a bit embarrassedly and said, there was also Xiaozhou, who used the ghost doctor's name to get people from the black market to send gifts. When I saw those people hear that it was the ghost doctor sending gifts, their eyes widened. Ha ha ha, of course, what kind of person is the ghost doctor? In a small ninth-tier country like Yaori, even a large family would hope to be able to form a relationship with the ghost doctor. The old man looked at Fengjiu full of pride and felt very proud. No one would have thought that the famous ghost doctor was his granddaughter. Grandfather, now that the matter of brother entering the manor has come to an end, shouldn't we also take care of the manor's matters? Fengjiu looked at the old man who was smiling proudly and asked. You're talking about handing over the authority? The old man stopped smiling and looked at her, saying, Grandfather has already prepared for this matter and plans to enter the palace tomorrow morning. Even if our family doesn't become the country's general, no one will dare to do anything to us. If we don't become the country's general, we'll be happy to be free and unfettered. And then do you need me to go with you tomorrow? The old man waved his hand. No need, no need. You can just stay at home. Grandfather will go. Seeing this, Fengjiu nodded and said to Guan Shilin, Brother, you've been busy all day. You should go back and rest first. Alright, then I'll go back first. If there's anything, just come find me. He smiled as he spoke. He nodded at the two of them before turning to leave. Grandfather, I'll go see old Bai. Go. The old man gestured and smiled as he watched her turn and leave. Only a few of them in the residence knew that Senior White had saved Feng Xiao. It was precisely because of this that they were astonished that Senior White had actually been able to resist a peak martial ancestor realm expert. However, they had never been able to discern exactly what level of spiritual beast it was. After all, it was a mutated spirit beast. Apart from being lazy and lustful, it only knew how to eat. If it had not been for that incident, it would not have been eye-catching at all. Especially since it was being raised, it was not locked up. It and the little pet called Chio Chio were free to move around the Feng Manor all day. Chapter 348. Let's go. Let's go out for a walk. She patted its head and led it to the stable. Just as she was about to take it out, she saw Cho-Cho, who was lying on the fake mountain, jump into her arms. You want to go out too? Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and looked at the little thing in her arms. All right then. Don't run around when you're outside. She stroked Cho-Cho's fur with one hand and then led Old White out the door. She got on, clamped her legs, and ran towards the outskirts. Because it was close to evening, Fengjiu did not stay outside for too long. After a walk, she came back. After bathing, she entered the space to cultivate until the next morning. After washing up, she went to her father's courtyard. When she entered the courtyard, she glanced around and saw that the Phoenix Guards were all there. Luo Yu even gave her a fawning smile. Seeing this, she told Leng Shuang behind her and walked into the room. Master. Leng Hua, who was serving in the room, bowed when he saw her come in and called out. N. She responded and walked into the room. She came to the bedside and smiled. Father, how are you feeling today? My spirit is good, but my chest hurts a little when I breathe. Feng Xiao, who was lying on the bed, looked much thinner because of his injury. Let me see. She sat down on the bed and unbuttoned his shirt to check the injury on his chest. She also checked the pulse in his hand. After a long time, she took back her hand. The injury on your chest is the most serious. Although you have taken medicine, it will take some time to recover. When grandfather comes back, I will go out again and find some herbs in Jufulan to make an ointment for you. It will help you recover faster. Jufulan. Feng Xiao was startled and shook his head. No, that place is too dangerous. How can a girl like you go there? If you lack herbs, we can buy them. There is no need to take the risk. It's fine. I've been there before and I'm familiar with the place. Moreover, you can buy other medicinal herbs, but there's one that you can't buy outside. Perhaps to others, Jufulan was full of danger, but to her, that place was a treasure trove. Little Fire Phoenix was picked up there. She also met her cheap brother there, and that uncle. The corner of her mouth twitched when she realized that the uncle she had always thought of was actually the Lord of Hell. Back then, when their lips accidentally touched, he fainted. But later on, when they were in the Enchanting kingdom, his strange behavior, and one time, he actually wanted to kiss her. Thinking of this, her expression became a little strange, and a strange feeling flashed through her heart. Looking at his daughter who was sitting by the bed in a daze, Feng Xiao smiled and didn't say anything. He just looked at her quietly, his heart full of pride as a father. She had always been the most outstanding. He just didn't know what kind of man would be worthy of her in the future. Although he hoped that she could find a good home, when he thought of the daughter that he had raised with great difficulty becoming someone else's, as a father, his heart was filled with jealousy. It was also good that her marriage with Murong Yixian was annulled. This way, she could stay by his side for a few more years. Chapter 349. Fengjiu stayed with her father for the entire morning. Only when it was close to noon did her grandfather return. "Phone girl, grandfather has finished handing over the matters." The old man walked in with a smile. Arriving at the table, he poured himself a cup of water. After drinking it, he walked into the bedroom. Seeing Feng Xiao leaning against the head of the bed, he sat down in a chair to the side. "Grandfather, the emperor didn't make things difficult for you, right?" Fengjiu looked at him and asked. Although the power had been returned to him, the Feng Manor's power was still not something that others dared to look down on. It was likely that the emperor would not be at ease with them. "No. Our Feng Manor has power. I was quite happy to see him. How could he make things difficult for an old man like me? It was a few elders that kept urging me to stay. They wanted me to change my mind. They are the elders of the previous generation. They naturally know our Feng Manor's loyalty to Yao Ri, but, The old man sighed. It could be said that his heart had turned cold toward that Morong Bo. They had spent most of their lives protecting Yao Ri for him, but in the end, they actually wanted to kill his son and marry his granddaughter to someone else to become a secondary princess. Secondary princess. That was just putting it nicely. To put it bluntly, wasn't she just a concubine? He was the beloved daughter of the Feng Manor. How could she become someone else's concubine? Even if she became the official princess, normal men were not worthy of his Feng girl. Since the power has been handed over, let's not worry about their matters for now. Grandfather, I want to talk to you about something. I want to go to Jiu Fu Lin to find some medicine for father. I will need you to take care of the family. She told him her plans. She calculated the time needed to go to Jiu Fu Lin. Half a month was enough. Jiu Fu Lin. The old man furrowed his brow. That place is not safe. How can a girl like you go? Can't you buy the medicine you lack? Seeing her say the same thing as her father, Fengjiu could not help but laugh. You can't buy it because it's from underground. Even the black market doesn't have it. Also, only I know where that place is, so I need to go. But you don't have to worry. I've been to Jiufu Forest before and am very familiar with it. There won't be any danger. I've calculated that I'll be back in half a month at the latest. If I'm fast, I'll be back in about 10 days. Hearing her say this, the old man thought for a moment and said, Then bring the Phoenix Guards with you. We can take care of them on the way. This way, we can be more at ease. She shook her head. No need, I want to go by myself. It'll be faster if I go by myself. Moreover, father is still injured. We can't leave people here. Let them guard this place to prevent any accidents. Then tell Shilin to go with you. Grandpa, I'm not a child. If I say there's no danger, then there's no danger. I still have to ask my brother to help me take care of you when I'm not around. Otherwise, I won't be at ease when I'm outside. But the old man still wanted to say something, but she interrupted him. No buts, Grandpa, you have to believe me. She chuckled and walked out without giving them a chance to speak. I'm going to talk to my brother and get ready. We'll leave soon. This girl. The old man shook his head helplessly but did not say anything else. Forget it, let her be. Since she said it's fine, then it should be fine. But it's best if she brings Lao Bai along. After all, Lao Bai is a spiritual beast and its fighting power is comparable to a Wuzong. If anything happens, Lao Bai can help her. They looked at each other and gestured for Fan Lin to speak. Patriarch. Fan Lin cupped his hands and saluted, saying, In truth, Patriarch does not need to worry about eldest young Miss safety. Based on our understanding of eldest young miss, she will not do anything that she is not confident in. Since she only took Luo Yu, there will definitely not be any danger. Moreover, what she is most worried about is the safety of her family. The old man glanced at them and suddenly revealed a smile. You guys are the most outstanding among the Phoenix Guards. It's your good fortune to be able to follow little Feng. Chapter 351. On the other side, Luo Yu was bitterly looking at Fengzhou, who was walking briskly in front of him. Master, we're just going out. Why do we have to make ourselves look like beggars? He tugged at the tattered clothes on his body. There were holes here and there. He didn't know which servant's clothes he had dug out from. Looking at his messy hair, it was as messy as a bird's nest. Those who didn't know would think that he hadn't washed his hair for a long time. Also, his handsome and charming face had been smeared with dust by her master. It couldn't be any uglier. Looking at the shoes on his feet, she didn't know where he had picked them up. His toes moved a little and even stretched out to cool off. Looking like this, he was even more pitiful than the beggars in Yunhua City. Looking at his master in front of him, she was also wearing tattered clothes, but slightly better than him. Her hair wasn't as messy, but her face was also smeared with dust. However, her eyes were shining brightly and were extremely eye-catching. Seeing her walking briskly and humming a tune from time to time, he couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He didn't expect his master to like this. Who didn't tidy themselves up nicely when they went out? Only a strange master like him would do the opposite. This way, I won't attract attention and won't get into trouble. She turned back and smiled at him. Her half-curved eyes were like crescent moons, giving people a good impression of her. However, this expression, coupled with her bright white teeth, didn't look like something a beggar would have. Seeing this, he sighed and said, "Master, you're so beautiful. No matter how you dress, you don't look like a beggar." That's right. That's why I didn't change my clothes. I didn't want to dress as a beggar. She smiled and said, "Walk faster. Don't stay in this city for too long." Yes, he replied helplessly and quickly followed her. However, after following her for a while, he felt that something was wrong. He looked at the person walking leisurely in front of him. She wasn't even panting, not to mention sweating all over her face. On the other hand, he hadn't even left Yunhua City. He was already panting and sweating profusely from chasing her. How did she walk? Why was it that he couldn't catch up to her even though she was so close? Phew! Master, master, wait for me. He raised his hand to wipe his sweat as he called out in a low voice. Fengzhou, who was in front of him, stopped and looked back. Seeing that his breathing was slightly chaotic, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Tired already? Looks like your stamina isn't that great either. Hearing this, Luo Yu's eyes widened. He only wanted to say, "It's not that my stamina isn't good, it's that your stamina is too abnormal." But in the end, he took a few deep breaths and calmed himself down before saying, "Master, shouldn't we find a carriage? How long are we going to walk at this speed?" Young Master Lin said that it would take about 3 days to get to Jiufu from here. If they really had to travel by foot, then it would probably take even longer. This round trip would take up quite a bit of time, right? However, Fengzhou only smiled and glanced at him. "Just follow me." With that, he continued to move forward. Luo Yu had no choice but to continue walking. He really didn't know what she was up to. Chapter 352. Damn! What is this? His eyes widened as he watched in disbelief as the boat gradually grew larger until it could accommodate 2 people. Only then did it stop. He took a big stride forward, touching and looking at the small boat, exclaiming again and again. What kind of boat is this? What material is it made of? Why haven't I seen this material before? It's so exquisite, and there seems to be a room inside. It can't be, right? It should be a decoration. Seeing him walk around the boat, touching the entire boat and studying it, Fengzhou couldn't help but laugh. She shook her head and walked onto the boat. What are you doing? Come on up. Master, is this a flying boat? Is this really a flying boat? His eyes lit up and he looked at her with admiration. Master actually has a flying boat. This is too incredible. As soon as he finished speaking, he jumped onto the boat. He stood in the boat and looked around excitedly like a child who had found a treasure. Fengzhou took out a spirit stone from her space and pressed it into a small box at the front of the boat. The flying boat floated up. For a flying boat, other than using spirit stones to control it, it could also be controlled by spiritual power. Furthermore, after the flying boat recognized its master, it could be controlled with just a thought. As soon as the flying boat took off, Luo Yu's body swayed. He was so shocked that he quickly squatted down. He curiously looked down and felt very excited. Ha ha ha. I never thought that I, Luo Yu, would be able to ride a flying boat one day. Hearing this, Fengzhou's mouth twitched. She speechlessly looked away and sat cross-legged at the front of the boat to cultivate. As for Luo Yu, he was lying on the side of the flying boat and looking down at the wind. As the flying boat flew higher and higher, the excitement on his face gradually disappeared. He was afraid of heights and his face paled. When he looked down, he faintly felt dizzy and wanted to fall down. He glanced at Fengzhou and quickly imitated her and sat down cross-legged. He took out some water from his chinkuan bag and drank a mouthful. After he calmed down, he let out a sigh of relief. After he recovered, he looked curiously at the protective shield formed by the spaceship. Under the protective cover, the wind couldn't blow in, and he didn't feel much of the airflow when the spaceship shuttled through. He could only faintly hear the sound of the airflow outside the protective cover. Because they were flying high, the white clouds seemed to be within reach. The town below was so small that it was only a black dot, but the scenery in the distance was so beautiful and enchanting. With the help of the flying ship, the journey that would have taken 3 days by horse carriage was shortened to 1 day. Before the sun had even risen the next day, they had already arrived at the boundary of the 9 Valleys forest. Fengzhou steered the spaceship to a place where there was no one, then he waved his hand and stored the spaceship away. Seeing that the sky was still dark, he said to Luo Yu, "Let's wait until dawn before going in. Let's find something to eat first." "Master, let's go over there. It's cooler under the tree over there." Luo Yu pointed to a place not far away and said. After walking over there with her, he took out some dry rations from his chinkuan bag. "Master, I still have some pastries here." He kept the hard biscuits for himself and handed her some pastries. With a strange gaze, he looked at her and asked, "Master, I see that there's a room at the back of the flying boat. Is it for decoration or can it be used? Could it be that the flying boat can become bigger?" Chapter 353. Fengzhou glanced at him and said, "This spaceship can be big or small. Naturally, the things on board can be big and useful." She paused and said, "Forget about the spaceship after we leave here. Don't get into trouble." "Yes, I understand," he replied. If the monarch and the others knew that she had a spaceship, they would definitely fight for it. After all, such a magical flying instrument was not something that anyone could have. She did not say anything else and he did not ask. The two ate quietly until the sky was about to brighten. Luo Yu stood up and looked around. He asked with some uncertainty, "Master, although this 9 volts forest is a dangerous place, it doesn't mean that no one has come here. Why haven't we seen anyone enter after sitting here for so long? I don't come here often. How would I know? She rolled her eyes and was about to walk in when she suddenly heard a sound. She looked up at the sky. She saw a few cultivators on flying swords heading towards Jofu Forest. They were so fast that they could only hear a gust of wind above their heads before everything returned to normal. They are cultivators. I wonder which country they are from. Luo Yute said enviously, it would be great if we could fly on a sword. Thinking about the feeling of flying on a sword made his whole body feel comfortable. Hearing this, Fingzhou chuckled, can't you fly on a sword when you are a martial arts grandmaster? Hurry up and practice. Once you are a martial arts grandmaster, you can also fly on a sword. Even if I am a martial arts grandmaster, I still need the sword manipulation chant. Besides, I am only a martial arts grandmaster and the mid-stage of the Black Realm. It will take me a few years to reach the peak. In fact, their practice speed was already very fast. After all, the master and the others were only martial arts grandmasters. Their ability was already considered the best among their peers. Fengzhou glanced at him. Seeing his self-satisfied face, he smiled and did not say anything. He just sped up and rushed forward. Luo Yute saw this and quickened his pace as well. The two figures rushed into the depths of Jofu Forest one after the other. They did not waste time in the outer area. In the evening, the two of them had already entered the inner circle. Because the sky was dark, they rested under a tree. Master, you rest here. I'll go hunt some game for dinner. Luo Yute said as he got up and walked around. Be careful, don't go too far. Fingzhou said, raising his eyes to look in the direction he had left. He took out some of the herbs he had picked along the way and sorted them out, making a few self-defense medicines. However, when the sky darkened and she finished mixing the herbs, she realized that Luo Yu had not returned for a long time. At this time, she felt that something was not right. After putting away the bottles of medicine, she stood up and looked around. At first, she didn't pay much attention to it because this was just the beginning of the inner circle. Even if there was danger, with Luo Yu's skills, it shouldn't be a problem. But what was going on now? He had actually disappeared without a trace. She closed her eyes and released her soul consciousness. Sure enough, she couldn't sense Luo Yu's aura anywhere. She opened her eyes, her expression slightly changed, and her brows slightly furrowed. What exactly happened? Chapter 354. As the sky darkened, she walked alone in the forest. All she could hear was the chirping of insects and the rustling of leaves in the wind. The moon was still hidden in the clouds, but in the darkness of the forest, there was a faint white glow on the ground. That was the scale powder she had scattered on Luo Yu's body. It couldn't be seen during the day, but it was especially conspicuous at night. Although she didn't know where he had gone or what had happened to him, as long as she followed the scale powder, she should be able to find him. She only hoped that when she found him, he was still alive. After walking for a while, she felt a slight chill in her heart. She felt a gust of night wind blow and goosebumps appeared all over her body. She paused for a moment, then picked up a tree branch and lit a fire. She used the fire to illuminate the path ahead, and also to see her surroundings more clearly. Logically speaking, she had been to Jufulan Forest before, so there shouldn't be any strange things or unknown dangers. But at this time, she followed the scale powder and found that she was walking further and further into the inner area. And based on the amount of scale powder scattered on the ground, Luo Yu probably didn't fight with anyone. Because the amount of scale powder scattered on the ground was very uniform, as if it was scattered on the ground very naturally. There wasn't any trace of a fight. Come on. Come on. Suddenly, a soft and distant voice drifted into her ears. It was like the gentle voice of a mother, causing her expression to relax. It also seemed to contain the magical power of hypnosis, destroying her willpower and causing her gaze to gradually become blurred. She moved her footsteps forward step by step, following the direction of the voice. Come on. Come on. It was as if there was a breath that enveloped her. In the haze, she seemed to see a pair of hands waving at her in front of her. A voice gently called her, asking her to follow it. Everything around her seemed to become blurry and her mind seemed to be blank. She stared blankly in front of her. Only that voice reverberated in her ears, guiding her. Suddenly, a sharp pain came from her arm. Her heart shook and she stopped in her tracks. She abruptly regained her senses and saw that her arm had been cut by a tree branch. With the help of the torch in her hand, she could see that blood was seeping out. It was this sharp pain that brought her back to her senses. Thinking of this, her heart sank, and her expression became serious. That voice was too strange, and she was almost bewitched by it. However, what was that? Was it a human? Or a ghost? She guarded her mind and looked around vigilantly. Everything was normal and there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, that voice came from an unknown place. Come on. This time, she actually saw two ghostly green flames dancing in front of her. The flames spun in front of her, and the sound seemed to be coming from the green flames. It was blurry and somewhat unreal. In an instant, her mind raced. The last time she came here, she didn't have these things. How could there be these things here? Since this thing had the ability to confuse people, why didn't she just go with the flow and see where this green will-o'-the-wisp could take her? At this moment, she was very sure that Luo Yu's disappearance had something to do with the ghostly fire and that strange voice. Chapter 355. After making up her mind, she pretended to be bewitched and continued to follow the voice. What surprised her was that she didn't see a single ferocious beast in the night as she followed the voice. Her surroundings were unusually quiet. She wondered what kind of danger would cause the ferocious beasts in the Nine Valleys forest to avoid it. How powerful must they be to be able to do this? She remembered that when she had first entered the forest, she had seen those cultivators enter the 9 Volts forest on their flying swords. Although she had only glanced at them, she could tell that those cultivators were already Golden Core experts. Golden Core cultivators. If they were in a small 9th grade country, a single Golden Core cultivator could cause an uproar in the country with a stomp of their feet. One had to know that in the Enchanting country, some of the patriarchs of the large families were only Golden Core cultivators. Thus, she guessed that those Golden Core cultivators who rode on flying swords into the 9 Valleys forest were at least from a 6th grade country. However, if they were from such a country, why would they come to a small country like the glorious Sun country? With doubts in her heart, she walked for 6 hours. Then, she saw the green flame in front of her fly forward with a whoosh. At this time, she heard a faint angry voice in front of her. Just as she was about to move forward, Little Fire Phoenix's anxious and worried voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Stupid woman. You can't go any further, it's very dangerous. Little Fire. You're awake. Feng Jiu was slightly startled. She stopped and asked with surprise. Of course. How can I talk to you if I'm not awake? You can't go any further. You won't be able to handle it with your current strength. Little Hofeng replied proudly. You can't go any further. You can't handle it with your current strength. Hearing this, Fengjiu paused for a moment. She narrowed her eyes and said with her divine sense, Luo Yu should be in front. I brought him out, I can't just ignore him. In the space, Little Fire Phoenix heard this and immediately shouted, Stupid woman. Didn't you hear me say it's very dangerous? If I say it's dangerous, it must be dangerous. You know it's dangerous yet you still jump in, are you stupid? In its opinion, Luo Yu was only a subordinate, an insignificant person. If he died, it wouldn't care, but this woman was different. She was its contractor, its master. If she died, it wouldn't be able to live. Moreover, in its opinion, a master who would die for a subordinate was definitely an idiot. Because it was not worth it in the first place. Even a fool would not do that. But looking at this stupid woman, it's mine thinking of this, it felt a burst of anger in its heart. Why did it have to worry as soon as it woke up? But it shouldn't have to worry about these things in the first place. But it couldn't help it. Fingzhou listened to its anxious scolding and slowly narrowed her eyes. Using her divine sense, she said softly, "Little fire, if you were in this situation, I would save you at all costs. Even if I know it's dangerous, I can't just stand by and do nothing." Hearing this, Little Fire Phoenix's heart trembled. He sat in the space in a daze. The anxiety and anger in his heart disappeared without a trace because of her words. A strange expression appeared on his delicate little face. Chapter 356. Hearing this, the corners of Fingzhou's lips curled into a smile. Yes, I will. It was because she knew how powerful the other party was that she would be even more careful. I've just woken up and my body hasn't fully awakened yet. I might not be able to help you. The little Fire Phoenix's awkward voice sounded in her mind again. Yes, it's fine. I can't beat them. As long as I save Luo Yu, I'll run. She only planned to leave after saving Luo Yu and did not intend to continue fighting. Thus, after making her decision, she slowly moved forward and walked towards the voice. When she saw the green willow, the wisps floating in front of her in the night, she was shocked. She felt that this matter was much more troublesome than she had imagined. The large open space in front of her had formed a barrier. Blood was gushing out of nowhere within the barrier's protective barrier. In the pitch-black night, it looked as if the blood was strangely surging in mid-air. There was so much blood, but at this moment, she was still standing outside the barrier and could not smell a trace of blood. She could only see dozens of green willow, the wisps dancing within the barrier. Hissing sounds were accompanied by bursts of struggling and painful cries from the flames. It was extremely strange in the night, causing one's hair to stand on end. Under the pitch-black night, only the green willow, the wisps, could be seen. Relying on the willow, the wisps, she could clearly see the figures of several people in the middle. Sitting cross-legged in the middle of the large open space was an old man with disheveled hair. His wrinkled old face looked withered and gloomy. Streaks of blood appeared on his withered face, as if they were flowing. It was a strange sight. The wide black robe on his body fluttered in the night wind. Around him, blood-stained skulls were placed in a circle. A dark aura that could be seen with the naked eye pervaded his entire body. That aura was so strong that it made her feel a strong sense of danger. It was as if a voice was telling her not to go any closer. Otherwise, she would definitely die here. The cultivators who were shouting angrily were the 4 people she saw when she entered the forest. However, they were all sitting on the ground. Their auras seemed to be draining away. Their faces were pale, and their words were weak. It was as if they couldn't move. Outside the circle of people, there were also people sitting on the ground. They seemed to have lost their consciousness as they sat cross-legged with lifeless gazes. They were like wooden statues as they stared blankly in front of them. Above their heads, there was a cluster of dark green flames revolving around them. And Luo Yu was one of them. Come on. Suddenly, a long-haired woman in a blood-red dress silently appeared in front of her like a ghost. The pale face that suddenly enlarged in front of her had no trace of blood, but the pair of lips were strangely red, and the pair of eyes that gave off a cold and ghostly aura made one's hair stand on end. Chapter 357. Come on. Come on. The woman in blood-red clothes walked backward, waving her pale hands in front of Fingzhou. Her blood-red eyes, which were cold and ghostly, stared straight at her, as if she wanted to look into the depths of her soul. Perhaps it was because she was confident in her own ability, but she did not doubt that this girl, who followed her like a puppet, would not be under her control. After all, this girl, who was dirty and messy like a beggar, was not eye-catching at all. In her eyes, this girl was the same as those people. They had all come here to sacrifice themselves. There was no exception. Fengzhou's eyes were empty as she walked in a daze. She was like a puppet that had lost its soul, but she was secretly paying attention to the movements around her. She discovered that the skinny and strange old man sitting in the middle did not pay much attention to her arrival, nor was he vigilant. He didn't even look in her direction. Obviously, he didn't put her in his eyes. She was slightly relieved. The old man should be an expert at the peak of the gold core realm. If he looked into her eyes, she was not sure that she could not be discovered under such circumstances. After entering the barrier, the thick stench of blood, accompanied by a nauseating stench, almost made her vomit. It was the stench that seeped out from the ground. It was very unpleasant. Smelling the stench, she couldn't help but wonder how many corpses were buried under the ground. The woman in the blood-red dress brought her to a place. After standing properly, she floated away. She sat down quietly like the others. She looked around and saw that the woman in the blood-red dress was floating in the air without touching the ground. That's right, if it wasn't a ghost, how could it appear so silently? She calculated in her heart that she would not be able to win against the old monster at the peak of the Jindan stage, but it should not be a big problem for her to escape with Luo Yu. Another thing was that she noticed that the people sitting around her, except for the 4 Jindan stage cultivators and herself, had all lost their consciousness. The strange old man and the woman in blood-red clothes seemed to be waiting for something. They did not attack the people around them. She hadn't done anything to them yet, but that didn't mean she wouldn't. Every cell in her body was screaming for danger. Just as she was thinking about how to take Luo Yu away, she heard the angry laughter of the Golden Core stage cultivators in front of her. We've known each other for so many years, but I didn't expect that you would even scheme against us. We were really blind. You entered the Tao as a devil. Even if you survive this calamity, you won't be able to go far. Ha 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 ha, fellow cultivators, it's a worthy death for you to be able to prolong my life. After all, you don't have many years left in your lifespan. Isn't it better to use your remaining lifespan to help me? The skinny old man laughed sinisterly. His voice was cold and ruthless. So he was tricked into coming here. Fengzhou looked at them in surprise. She was not in the mood to pay attention to them. She felt that as the night deepened, the blood qi in the enchantment became thicker and thicker. She knew that she could not wait any longer. So she gritted her teeth, stood up from the ground with a whoosh, and quickly rushed forward to pull up Luo Yu, who was sitting on the ground in a daze, and covered his mouth and nose with her other hand. Chapter 358. Who is this person? The 4 gold core cultivators were stunned as they watched the thin and small figure who was originally sitting in a daze suddenly stand up and rush out. He arrived at a place only 5 or 6 meters away from them and pulled the dirty man up. He covered the man's mouth and nose with one hand and pulled him out of the barrier. They couldn't help but be dumbfounded. They were gold core cultivators, but when they entered the enchantment, they felt weak all over and couldn't even stand up. What was going on with that small figure? In addition to the enchantment and the enchantment, there was also the ghost voice of the red-clothed female ghost. If one didn't have a gold core cultivation, it was impossible to resist. But the scene in front of them broke this rule, causing their minds to go blank as they looked at the scene in shock. A pungent smell rushed into his mind, causing Luo Yu to suddenly wake up. When he saw the strange and terrible things around him, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow! What the hell? Man-eating ghost! Why aren't you running?" Fingzhou said angrily, grabbing him by the collar and quickly pulling him out of the enchantment. At this time, the skinny evil old man had already recovered from his shock. Seeing that the two of them were about to escape the barrier, he waved his hand and a stream of blood gushed out from the ground. It was like a blood waterfall that flowed out from the barrier and then flowed back. At that moment, Fingzhou grabbed Luo Yu's collar and couldn't stop his feet from colliding with the blood waterfall on the enchantment. Bang! Hiss! The sound of the collision sounded. After the two were bounced back, they fell to the ground first. Before they could stand up, they saw a pair of skeletal hands reach out from under the ground and grab their feet, pulling them down with all their strength. "Get out of my way!" Luo Yu roared and kicked the pair of skeletal hands into pieces. Who would have thought that the skeletal hands were as hard as iron? No matter how hard he kicked, they didn't break. Instead, they dragged him deeper and deeper into the mud. His feet sank deeper into the mud. Just when he was a little shocked, he looked at his master and was frightened by her valiant posture. Her expression was ugly as she stared at the pair of skeletal hands that were pulling her legs down. As if she was enraged, she used her hands to crush the skeletal hands and stood up with a kick. She even cursed in disgust. "Damn! This damn thing is so dirty." Luo Yu looked at her in shock. He never knew that his master, who was sometimes charming and enchanting, sometimes elegant, sometimes gentle and harmless, and sometimes cunning like a fox, could curse. He suddenly came back to his senses and saw that his hands were also being held by a pair of skeletal hands. He suddenly exclaimed, "Master! Save me!" Fengzhou looked back and saw that Luo Yu was still sitting on the ground and being grabbed by the skeletal hand. She immediately formed a seal with her fingers and flicked it out. With a few bangs, the skeletal hand holding Luo Yu exploded one by one and scattered all over the ground. "Go!" She grabbed his collar with one hand and pulled him up. She didn't want to fight. Her eyes fell on the enchantment again, intending to break the enchantment. The eyes of the 4 golden core cultivators who saw her pinch her fingers lit up and the light of hope jumped in their eyes. Seeing that she was about to pull the man away, they immediately shouted, "Little friend! Help!" Chapter 359. It was already good enough that she could escape with Luo Yu. Saving them. Who knew if the two of them would also die here? Risking death to save a few golden core cultivators who had no relatives or friends. She wasn't that kind. "Since you're here, then stay," the skinny, evil old man said sinisterly. As soon as his voice fell, the blood-robed female ghost who was originally floating behind him called out in a low voice. "Come on. Come on. Stay." Stayed up. The blood-robed female ghost swept through the air, and with a whoosh, she flew towards Fengzhou and Luo Yu. Her voice was soft and strange, faintly revealing a cold aura. Fengzhou noticed that Luo Yu, who was originally pulled up by her, began to lose his consciousness after hearing the voice that seemed to be able to control people's minds. At that moment, she stretched out her hand and slapped the back of his head, scolding, "What are you daydreaming about? If you daydream again, you'll stay here with her." Hiss. Once he felt the pain, Luo Yu woke up again. Seeing that he had almost lost his consciousness again, he couldn't help but feel a wave of fear. "Master, this ghost thing is too powerful. I can't hear her voice." He didn't want to, but for some reason, when he heard that soft voice, he forgot where he was. His entire brain was dizzy, and his consciousness was completely out of control. That's a ghost cultivator with some cultivation. Her strength is equivalent to a cultivator at the foundation establishment stage. With your strength, of course you can't withstand it. She said unhappily and threw him a bottle. Use this medicine to cover your mouth and nose. Once you breathe it in, your brain will be in a state of excitement and won't be easily controlled. As soon as she finished speaking, she pushed him away and moved her hand. A Qingfeng sword with a cold light appeared in her hand with a whoosh. With a sweep of her hand, it was accompanied by a sharp sword aura as it pierced towards the blood-robed female ghost floating over. Seeing this, Luo Yu hurriedly opened it and took a sniff. He felt that the smell was so pungent that it made him uncomfortable, but he couldn't deny that just by breathing in a little, his whole body was as excited as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He thought of a way, tore off a strip of cloth from his inner clothes, poured some of the medicine on it, and tied up his mouth and nose. He put away the medicine bottle and took out a long sword to try to break the barrier. Qingfeng sword. The 4 gold core cultivators recognized the azure edge sword and were all shocked. They didn't expect to see this ancient divine sword that had disappeared for a long time in this place, and they didn't expect that the person holding the sword would be a little girl who looked to be 15 or 16 years old. Ha ha ha. I never imagined that I would actually be able to see the ancient divine sword, azure tip, in this place. Even the heavens are helping me, ha 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 ha. The skinny and sinister old man who was sitting cross-legged raised his head and laughed loudly. A pressure that could be seen with the naked eye spread out along with his laughter. He looked at the sky getting darker and darker, and the excitement in his eyes became more and more obvious. Once midnight arrived, it would be time for him to complete his task. Luo Yu's sword was bounced back as if it had hit some kind of protective barrier. His attack could not break the barrier, so he could only grit his teeth and turn back to join Fingzhou in the battle with the blood-red ghost. He asked anxiously, "Master, what should I do if I can't break the barrier?" "That's a barrier laid down by an old monster at the peak of the Gold Core realm. It would be strange if you could break it." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.